really our mission is bringing family and friends around the table. What is up, guys? We are here for another episode of At the Table with, I don't know, either Ryan Lane or Lane's Barbecue. I'm not sure how we're saying it, but welcome. So I am so excited today. I've got a buddy of mine. We've been friends now for about 11, going on maybe 11 or 12 years. So this guy has one of the biggest hearts, and I can't wait for him to just be able to share his story, you know, what he's been working on the past 12 years, and just in business and nonprofit world, and just really people. And it's all kind of goes back to people. So super excited to introduce Jim Hollinsworth of, you want to say Path
United.
Path United. So it's kind of like a different, it was Path Project, then
right.
Path United. I have to stop myself every time, like, am I saying it right?
You got it.
But so just super excited. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome. Actually, just kind of like how our businesses have both grown over the years. And so I know you've been a huge part of just me just being able to unload on you sometimes. Like, here's what I'm going through. And you're like, this is what I'm going through too. So thank you so much for joining us. You want to just kick it off? Maybe tell us a little bit about your family and why you do what you do. How about that?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Ryan, for sitting down. This is fun. I love to talk. So it's going to be great. Yeah. My wife, Melinda, and I, we've been married for almost 21 years.
Okay.
We've got a 15-year-old daughter, Kate, and a 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old son, Will. So they keep us pretty busy, for sure. And so my wife and I, about 14 years ago, met a family that lived in a mobile home park in Loganville, near where we live. And that's how Path got started. I'm happy to unpack that more. But
actually, I think you have to unpack it, because I think we have to understand like where the first center came from too.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy story.
Yeah, sure. So let's, backtrack. 2008, we had a newborn baby at home.
Yeah.
I was a pastor at one of the assistant pastors at Greystone Church in Loganville.
Close to us.
Yep. Melinda had been a teacher, public school teacher for almost 10 years. Yeah. So we had our daughter. She was 6 months old. We were kind of in this, we were like 30 years old, kind of this moment of like, what are we supposed to do with the rest of our lives? I mean, we felt good. She was a teacher, I was a pastor, but we didn't feel like this is where it was going to go forever. And so we actually went on a trip to South Africa the year before, and we're just super inspired by local folks loving their neighbors. So we came home and we were like, well, what does that look like?
Yeah.
And we honestly had no clue. And we spent a year just kind of praying and, God, how can we love our neighbors, serve our neighbors well? We live here in the suburbs. Like, what in the world is that going to look like? So December 2008, we met a family through a local Christmas sponsorship with the Southeast Gwinnett Co-op, which is a great food ministry.
Who is that? Laura
Drake.
Yeah. I remember her.
Laura,
we made that connection.
Yeah. Laura is the best. She's still there. Running the show there. They're doing great stuff for families in the Snellville, Loganville, Grayson community, which is where we were. And so we met a family that lived in a mobile home park about 2 to 3 miles from where we lived. I mean, really close. We drove over to deliver some Christmas gifts and knocked on the door. We met this family. They were first generation immigrants from Mexico. The parents didn't speak English, but there were 6 kids living in the home. Yeah. Kids spoke English. We kind of hit it off with them and stayed for a little bit and left, and then kind of had this nudge, just like, hey, let's just stop back by one day. We're going to jump in or we'll just pull in and say hello. So we did. We pulled in a couple weeks later and, went inside, hung out for a little bit, just kind of got to know the kids a little more. Yeah. And so we started doing this like a little bit. That grew, that relationship grew. And then one afternoon, I don't remember the exact day, this was 2009, the mom in that family, Aurora, she asked Melinda, can you help our kids with homework? Because I don't speak English, but I want them to do good in school. Sure. I don't know how. So we said, sure. So we did a little homework that day, and she said, can you come back next week? So we came back next week. And so this thing just started really small with a few kids in this one family doing some homework. And then we started to get to know some other kids in the neighborhood. So their moms were interested. So we started a homework club. And we met in the office in the mobile home park. This was like, so we kind of like, Melinda and I looked at each other one day and we were like, hey, this is kind of, maybe what we have been feeling since we got back from South Africa. It's the way that we can serve. We'll just do a little bit of homework and kind of this good deed. Well, we didn't know what was about to happen. So a couple weeks into this homework club, there was a shooting that happened.
Yeah. This is what I was talking. I remember this I was like,
this is what changed. It changed our life. Yeah. We both grew up in this like really, really comfortable white suburban bubble. The idea of a shooting wasn't something that seemed normal in our world. And this is just down the street from our house. So there's a shooting that happened. It was a drug deal in one of the mobile homes. So we showed up for the homework club. We had seen it on the news and everything. So we knew it had happened. We had talked to some of the kids. We showed up for the homework club that following week, and the kids were all talking about it. So we didn't even know what to say. What do you say? And we're having the homework session. The property manager comes to me and says, hey, you heard about the shooting. The home is abandoned. Do y'all want it? We'll give it to you for your homework club. And I was like, what? I mean, so this was like the first moment of me realizing like how I'm wired in the sense of like, I am a gut reaction guy. Like I just said, sure. I was like, yeah, we'll take it.
I'm the same way, which is now getting me in a lot of trouble.
Listen, it gets me in trouble every week.
Every time.
But at the time, it was like, I was just, okay, sure.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, she tells me, hey, we'll give this to you, but you gotta go meet one of the guys that used to live in this trailer to get the title. I was like, what do you mean? She was like, well, he's one of the guys that got shot. I was like, oh. She's like, yeah, he's a drug dealer. I was like, okay. So, all
right, guy.
It was like, I remember I drove to this gas station, met this guy. It was really quick. He gave me this title. I was like, all right, I'll see you later. Like,
that was it?
So that was it. We come back, like we go in this building.
Yeah.
It is a crime scene. Like there's bullet holes and blood on the floor and drugs and everything else. Like I looked at it and I was like, I don't know what to do here. Yeah. But I had a friend of mine with me, a guy named Russell Ward, who's just the best. He lives in your neighborhood, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So does your old pastor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jonathan lives in there, too.
Yeah. A lot of connections over Providence. But he was a contractor. He came with me. He was like, we can clean this up.
So quick pause, because I'm just thinking through the lens of if I told Stacy, like, hey, good news and bad news. Good news, God provided a place for us to do this. Bad news is it's a crime scene. She would be like, that's really bad news. And how did Melinda, like, the thing is, it was on Melinda's heart too. So does that help?
I think it helped.
I don't want to see it till it's done or
what, so I think Melinda's heart was in it. She was really the catalyst those first few sessions. She was the one when something big was going to happen, it was almost like God was speaking to her.
Yeah.
Like through Aurora, the mom in that first family. And then, right around the time this trailer happened, there was a 6th grade girl named Sophia who pulled Melinda aside one day and said, when are y'all going to leave? And Melinda said, what do you mean? She said, well, every time a church comes into our neighborhood, they never stay. They come one time and we never see them again.
Is that abandonment?
Yeah. So like that was to Melinda. So Melinda was in like, I do think there's a piece of the building, like it was a little nervous. It was like, I remember us asking the question to our small group at church right after, hey, should we go back? Like there's shootings that happen in this neighborhood. Like this seems a little dangerous.
There always seems to be one thing, a calling from God.
Yeah.
And then what you think you're supposed to do, and then challenges arise, and you're like, maybe that's a sign that we shouldn't, instead of like plowing through.
So, and I think so for Melinda and I, like she has a little more of this like prophetic vision, voice in the sense of like I think that she sees things in a lot of ways before anyone else.
Yeah.
And not in a weird way, but in like, hey, this is what needs to happen, and just like trusting God that's going to happen. So for me, I'm definitely more of a gut instinct, like reactionary, like, oh, you're going to give us a trailer? Sure, we'll take it.
Yeah.
We're going to walk in. Hey, how are we going to do this? Oh, I don't know. We'll figure it out. And that's kind of what happened. Like, but we had some guys from the church came with us. We cleaned it up, turned it into like a classroom you'd see at a school. So we opened this community center, and it was really a big moment. This was 2010. it went a long way towards trust in the neighborhood, and we got to know families. We ended up hiring someone we moved from 1 day a week to 2 days a week, and then to 4 days a week of after school programming. And the kids and families were telling us, hey, like, we're struggling in school. We need help with academic support. So we started just kind of leaning into that, see what it looks like without any, I mean, I was still working at the church, like never had any.
Was she still teaching?
No, Melinda was staying home. So Melinda was present.
When the kids.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Gotcha. We had one, our daughter was a toddler. Our son would come along in 2011. So through this season, Melinda had some time in terms of she wasn't working full time.
Got it.
I was still working at the church, so trying to be there as much as I can, but Melinda was there. But it grew to the point where so many kids and families, we hired someone without, I remember the first person that we hired, she was a teacher, and she came to us, she said, I think I'm supposed to do this as my job. And I looked at her and I said, that sounds awesome. I have no money.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we have no money. Yeah. I don't know where we're going to pay you.
Yeah.
And I think we told her, so the story is, she heard me say $2,000, and I meant $2,000 a month. And she thought I meant $2,000 for the year.
Yeah.
And she was still going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty wild. Like,
that is wild.
I was like, no, we can do it. We can probably figure out a little more than that. Like, so we raised a little bit of money and paid her that first year. I mean, I don't know how we did it.
Cool. I'm still imagining. I remember the first time you told me the story about, I was standing in the trailer. Yeah. And you're like, this was actually, there was blood here. Yep. There were bullet holes here. And we came through. And I was like, that is just a picture of like God redeeming something. You know what I mean? Something so awful, how he's able to turn that into something amazing. So that's super cool. All right. So here's what I think a lot of people do. They feel like they need to be doing something else. And so they either struggle with what is it going to be? And then, or if something comes to them, they're like, maybe that's not it. What about next? So like, what were some of the things, both of y'all had a huge vision for this. You kept going at it, but what are like some of the early struggles? Like, do you remember something big, maybe in the first or second year? Like, what was some of the big hurdles that you had to overcome? Because I think that's what a lot of people are going to face. And it's just having that resolve to get past them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for Melinda and I is that we're both human, and that we were just like, we were scared.
Yeah.
I mean, we were scared to try something new, to step out from the like, this is what we've known. Like, I had a good job.
Pastor and teacher, those are pretty secure.
Yeah. We had secure, like Melinda could be a teacher forever. I was a pastor, had a good job. Like we were like, had a great situation, but there was this nudge, like this constant nudge, and we were seeing it happen. Like, we were seeing it unfold.
Yeah.
We were like, okay, well, we'll hire someone else to do it. And we did. And then it was like, well, now we got to raise money when there's no one else that's going to raise the money except us.
Yeah.
And then around that same time, we got a call from like the owners of the park. They were like, we want y'all to do what you're doing in more neighborhoods that we own. We were like, I'm coming back to him. I was like, okay. And then it's like, okay, well, we got to do this. So we were literally, I remember Melinda and I sitting in our living room one night.
Yeah.
And we were like, are we going to do this? And we were scared. And that was the obstacle, was the fear. And I remember us saying, you know what? This is scary. But I told her, I said, I don't want to be 60 and look back and say, I wish we had gone for it, but we didn't because we were scared. And I think that's the reason that we just said, let's go.
Yeah.
Is I didn't have any regrets.
That's cool. Man,
and so we did.
That's so awesome. That's awesome. So you're all right. Let's talk about raising money. Cause I think a lot of people, a lot of times people, here's the thing, even though it's a nonprofit, it still operates much like a business, right?
Absolutely.
You still got to raise money. You still got bills. You still got all this stuff. So how does one go about who's, say, starting a nonprofit, like going about raising money?
Yeah, for us, everything started with the people that we knew in our close group.
Sphere of influence.
Every nonprofit, I think every startup in a lot of ways, like you're going to start with that network. Like if you're going to do a Kickstarter or whatever, I mean, it's going to be people that know you, that trust you. For us, it was, hey, we're going to, go file with the IRS and become a nonprofit. Who are we going to ask first to give us some money? Or we did a fundraising event. Who are we going to invite to that? It's going to be people that we know. So for us, it was a lot of folks through church. We both have big families. So we're both from here.
Yep.
So we have had networks, and that was, it was definitely helpful.
Yeah.
Like if we were living in California and didn't know us anybody, it was really a lot harder, but we knew some people, we had some places to start. It's also learning, like, you know, Melinda's a teacher, like she was the best with the kids, but like, she didn't want to raise money. So it's like, I was like, well, I can do it. I didn't know that about my personality, but I know people. I'm a connector type personality. And so just having conversations, like I don't think I'm good at raising money now, but I'm good at meeting people.
Like the way, like just in seeing your approach throughout the years, like you don't even have to ask for money.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think your why is so big behind what you guys do. Like people are literally just trying to figure out how to give. And I know this because, and we can kind of get to the gala, the big dinner that you guys did a ton of. I guess COVID kind of changed some of that, but I just remember like the first year my brother and I did it. It was 2013 or 2014. I think it was 2014.
I think it's 14. Yeah.
And I remember you called and you're like, hey, you know, we had just started catering, and in fact, I was done because was it April?
Yeah, April, exactly. Yep.
So I'd gone part-time in January from insurance, full-time in February. So I was full in. And I remember you called and you're like, hey, can you do, you know, cater? I think it would be awesome. We've done Longhorn or a couple other things in the past. And like, we just want to try to do something different. And I was like, yeah, we totally do it. And I was like, how many people are you thinking? You're like, I don't know, 350. And I was like, 350. Yeah, sure. I remember I hung up and I called my brother and I was like, hey, I'm going to need some help. He's like, with what? I was like, just trust me, this is going to be a fun one. And I remember that I called Jane with Cornbread and Caviar, who we had bought the place over in Bethlehem, but she was still renting the kitchen. And I remember thinking like, hey, Jane, I don't have the oven space to do like green beans and all this other stuff. She's like, I'll take care of that if you just do the meat. And I was like, excellent. And I remember we cooked brisket, and then we showed up and we grilled chicken on the back of like the smoker grill at the setup. And it turned out, well, hopefully it turned out amazing.
Oh, listen, it was the best. I mean, like our partnership with you goes back, I mean, literally that long, 10 years plus. I mean, and I remember, we had done Longhorn for this event, and it was just fine, you know, like, but then when people came and they had lanes that first one, I mean, so many people. And
they didn't even know what lanes was.
No, I don't think they did at that point. Like most people, that was their first exposure to it.
Yeah.
They ate the brisket and they were like, what in the world is this? Like, this is the best thing I've ever had. So many people. I mean, I honestly think that the part of the big success of that event for several years was like, people were like, I mean, I'm not kidding you. I would send the invite out. People say, are you having lanes? I'll be there.
So here's what's funny is as I kind of sit back and like, I've just been doing a lot of reflecting of like what's all occurred over the last 10 years. And while you say that, I would say the same thing. I think a lot of the reasons lanes kind of grew and took off was those events. Yep. Like you think there's 350 local people, some of which I knew, but they just still didn't even know I was doing barbecue. They just thought I was, because I was in a small group with your brother and Matt Shirley and Adam Wilson and all those guys when they were still at Greystone and I was at Bethlehem, but I just knew them from the business world. And so it's just cool to think like how it's grown, like they've both grown together. But when you say that, I'm thinking, man, if it weren't for, you know, Path United, like I don't know what we would be doing. And that was one of those things I knew that because of who you are, there would be grace, and we can kind of talk about some of the issues that at that one event that we won't even talk about. I know it still gives me and Brian like I have hives, but it's every caterer's nightmare, and we can talk about that next. But I say that to say like I think the grace that you guys always show, and just knowing that like you know we're gonna give everything we have, but sometimes you're going to come up short, you know? And so, but that's been the beauty of it, is seeing all the smiles every year. I remember, see the first year, the second year, you're like, hey, would you also like donate a private dinner? And I was like, sure. I was like, I don't even know what that looks like, but I'd be more than happy to do it. And I remember, who was the auctioneer? Stacy Britt. And so I remember you came up and you're like, all right, cool. So it's going to be like 8 to 10 people. I was like, cool, we'll go to their house. We'll like, if they have a grill, we'll use their grill. If they don't, we'll bring a grill. Like the goal is like, they don't have to lift a finger. We'll come in, we'll cook, we'll do everything, and then we'll clean up and get out while they can enjoy it, you know? And I remember you being like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And I remember he started auctioning stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, like 2,500, 3,000, 3,500. And I was like, oh man, you can't be like, hey, so I think we could probably auction 3 of these off. Would you do 3? And I'm like, yeah. I see Brian like, what are you doing? You know? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I remember they sold 3. Yeah. And I know Chris Snell, he got one. And that was when we would even, I don't even care if he bought one. I'd go over to his house and cook anytime. I love hanging out with him, Miss Martha, and it's so much fun. But just like the things here's what I miss the most about the business and where we are now is it's really hard to do things like that anymore. And so I think it's like right timing, right place, all those things, the growing, like the things that you're doing in the beginning that you wish you could do now, but it's just tough.
Listen, it's the same for us. So, I mean, the parallels are really cool.
Yeah.
Thinking about those, I mean, I don't always go back and think about those first few years in this way. And it's really fun because hearing you talk about those early years, I mean, we didn't raise money any other way except this gala. Yeah. Like we did this big dinner. And Lane's Barbecue was going to cater, and the momentum would build, and people would ask me, "Hey, is Lane's coming?" And then, like you talk about these private dinners. I mean, everyone just it was such a fun season, but we don't do it anymore, and there's a lot of reasons. I mean, there are strategic reasons.
You did one after COVID,
we did,
right? Like
we did, and it went. We did, and it doesn't mean that we'll never do one again, but like. The way that we've morphed as an organization, we have had to kind of choose, like, where are we going to put our energy into fundraising? And like the event thing, it's not the right fit right now. Yeah. Like we have, I don't want to say outgrown it, but we're at a different place. Like, and it's similar to what you're saying. It's
absolutely.
Like, hey, you probably can't cater a 350 person dinner anymore. Like, because all these other things are happening that were kind of started from this thing that you love to do. And so like, it's tricky.
So that's really my biggest struggle right now is like the reason I started it. Well, a couple struggles, but one of the reasons I started the business is because I absolutely love the smiles on people's faces, like when we're serving them food. Like that's it, right? And as it grows, and now you have a team and you have other responsibilities and payroll and all this stuff, it gets a lot harder to do that. And so in the way that your business is changing from day one to now, what are some of those struggles that you face, and kind of how do you deal with them?
Yeah, I think for us, it's been that same story. I mean, we saw growth opportunities from the beginning. So I mentioned the owners of the first mobile home park in Loganville. I mean, they were said, "Hey, we want y'all in more of our parks," and so we did. Like we reached out to local churches here locally in Loganville, Stone Mountain, Buford, Sugar Hill. And we expanded into other mobile home parks. So in the first few years is like growth from 1 into now we're working in 5 neighborhoods, and then 6, and then 7, and then 8, and like some of them
states.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and then along that same line, like we expanded to Nashville, Tennessee. So we still work in a neighborhood up there. So for me, that looked like, hey, that at the beginning it was like this, very organic. Didn't need to worry about money that much. We were just kind of doing our thing. To the point where we had people working for us. Well, I had to leave my job at the church in order to do this full time because I needed to invest the time to raise the money in order to pay for the people. So it was this cycle. So for me, my role has changed. Like I am with the students and families that live in the mobile home park a lot less now. And I love that piece, but I also have to step back and recognize as we've grown, we're in, 7 neighborhoods now. We have a staff of 20 people that are all amazing. Most of them are working with kids every day. Like we work with 650 kids a week. And so while I would love to do some of that, I'm recognized like I am best suited in this role to raise the money and lead the vision of the organization amongst the 20 of us. Like that's my role for now for this season. And that may change. So, but I love it. I mean, it's new.
Would you say that's your natural gifting?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think that I am.
I would say so too.
Yeah, I think that I am I didn't know this 12 years ago, but I think that I have natural gifts around just ideas and vision that didn't come to the surface until they were kind of, had to happen. Like someone's got to do this. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'm kind of good at this. I love people. I love our team.
Yeah.
So I
love your team too.
Yeah, I'm hands-on with our team, and we've been able to, we have built out a leadership team, and they do a lot of the strategy and planning on the program side. But I still am involved and talk to them constantly. And so it's fun. Like I like what I'm doing. Like, but there are times that I miss the smallness.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing is like, what do I want the next, I'm 44. What do I want the next 20 years to look like? And this is where we're at. Like, do we want, like we have opportunities to scale into other cities, other places. And the question we're asking is that what we want?
Yeah.
Like, do we want to be this big thing and, with a bigger budget and bigger expenses and, have
more
to raise
stress.
more money? Yeah. More stress. Like, or do we like what we're doing? Do we want to be able to be local? And I don't have an answer. I mean, we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. That's cool. I don't think you have to have an answer. I think the problem is when you're leading, sometimes you feel like you have to have an answer. And so sometimes you force it.
Sure.
Just because you're like, I just want to tell them something.
Sure.
That's what I've found as we've grown. And I realized that my natural ability is still like serving. Like that was the gift that I've been given. And like, it's whether it's not, so it looks a little different now. I don't prepare all the food, but I still love to kind of be boots on the ground as we're doing that. But what I found is, as I kind of open my hands up like this and kind of like take the clutch off of it, so many, like Karen, you met Karen Parker and like Jeremy, like this podcast or any of our social media or any of that would not even occur if it weren't for like the amazing team that like God's brought to us. Like it's so great. And what I realize is like, when you start, you have to do it all. But it's okay because while you're doing it all, it's still on a very small scale. And so even if you make mistakes, no one's there to really see it. Right. But as it grows, like all of that is exposed really fast. And so what I found is like by letting Jeremy do what his natural giftedness is and Karen to do what hers is, and Matt's just come on board and he's putting in structure and all this accountability and all the things that I suck at. Yeah. I mean, like horrible because that's just not the way I'm wired.
Yep.
But like communication's getting better. Like people are understanding more of what their role is and just all these things. I'm like, oh, okay. Which is going to then hopefully let me get back to doing what I do, what I feel I do well. And I think what I do that like inspires me to keep going and doing more. We did a group event last Friday for our team, and while I didn't get to cook it, like we got to sit there and we all got to gather around a table. And our mission is bringing family and friends around a table to share meals. And like, truth is, we've been so busy. There've been times like we haven't forgotten our mission, but like we're not living it at home. It's like if we're not going to live it at home, how can we sit there and try to tell the world that that's what we want to do? And so that's really been like we've been super convicted about. Let's bring everyone back in. But I think it was just so much chaos and just trying to deal with it all. So I say that to say, when you had like, you go to Africa, you go on this trip, you realize like, what are we supposed to do? How does that relate to, do you feel like you followed the course of what you guys were supposed to do over the last 12, 13 years?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think for sure. I think it was a path that we could have said no to, but again, I think with Melinda's just the things that God spoke to her, and combined with my I think between the two of us, I'm a little bit more of a risk taker. Yeah, and I was like, let's just do it. And I think she was the one that had the wisdom in her mind of like, this is how it can play out.
Yeah.
So I think that combo was great. Like, so yes, like I think that we are. I mean, I think when I look back, I mean, who knows what the future holds, but I mean, I think for the last 12 years, we're doing what feels like we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. How does that work? And I'm probably gonna get in trouble for asking this. I'm sure Stacy's probably not listening to this one, but how is it working with your spouse, like on a day-to-day? And let me take that back and say, Stacy, we work together every day. She has to listen to me all the time, like whether issues or just running stuff through, but like she's not having to necessarily make the decision. Yeah. She's tons of input, but it's not like you guys are like in the battle together.
Yeah, it has been from the beginning. And I think that there's, I've always said, it has had way more positives than negatives.
That's great.
And I think the key is because from the beginning, we trusted each other. You know, like you think about a business partner in any company or whatever, like you start out something with somebody, like you may not know them that well, but we knew each other really well. Yeah. And I knew what her heart was. We didn't know, the thing we didn't know though was like tactically, like what we were good at.
Yeah.
We learned that through trial and error. I mean, we went down a long season of where Melinda was leading our team and I was fundraising, and we thought that this is going to be the great, like Melinda is really good at the work that we do. She's really good with kids. So it was just kind of like this natural, well, she's older than the rest of our team now. Not that much, but you know, just a little older.
Easy killer.
But we have, you know, like we've hired some younger people. And so it was like natural to say, well, Melinda's done this and she knows how to, she's the perfect person to lead. But we realized like after years of doing that, like it actually isn't what she wanted to do. It's not what she's good at. So we changed that. And that was kind of fun too. I mean, you know, we knew that no one was getting fired. Like she's not getting fired. I'm not getting fired. So we had to work it out. We had to figure out like the right roles, which was a really cool thing for us. And so she now is just working with teenagers. Like she's not leading adults anymore and she's loving it. Yeah. And so I've absorbed a little bit more of her job, but that's actually my giftings. And so when we're both working in our giftings, it doesn't feel as much like work. Yeah. But I think for a few years we were just kind of like pounding away of like, well, this is what we're supposed to do because this is just kind of seems right. So to answer your question, I mean, we have learned a boatload about each other. Yeah. It's strengthened our marriage. I mean, we've had to work through like hard stuff, hard conversations about staff and money and all this stuff. But I think it's made us trust each other anymore. So we love it.
Have you guys found a way to separate the two, like separate home and family?
It's really good. It's a really good question. No, I mean, the quick answer is no, not really. But I think what we have learned is that we know the right times to talk about it, which is when both of us feel like our tanks are full in terms of energy. Yeah. So when those moments happen, we can talk about Path all day long and all the fun stuff and like really cool things. And we're both like, it energizes us. Yeah. But if one or the other or both is feeling drained or tired from personal stuff or work stuff or whatever, work stuff doesn't go great. So we just kind of learned like, we don't really have hard and fast lines. I mean, we talk about work at night, you know, on a date or whatever, but it's the right time. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Well, I think, and that's a tough thing. And really, you know, Stacy's still teaching. And so it's one of those things, like, even though she's still got her own thing, like she still has to hear everything that's going through my head. So she's in it 100%. And so sometimes I have to intentionally be like, wait, she doesn't want to talk about lanes all the time.
You know? Absolutely. And I think the key for us, we've learned is like, if each of us is just honest and says, hey, I don't want to talk about this right now. The other one's like, yeah, that's cool. Like,
that's good.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right. So let's talk some about the kids. Yeah. Like we can talk about your kids, but like the kids in the, like, that you guys are, I mean, what would you even say? Is it tutoring? Is that what?
Not anymore. It started that way.
Yeah, because I remember in the very beginning.
Yeah, it was homework, man. We were doing homework and tutoring. We were like, we're going to solve all the problems like through this after school program. Then we realized like that actually isn't the thing.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because we've kind of been involved in some of that and like life skills and just other things. But what is some of the reasons why, I guess, what's the downfall of just tutoring? Let's say that.
Yeah, I think, you know, like, of course, I mean, every kid can benefit in some ways, but for us, we found that it was more of a Band-Aid on a deeper problem, which is every kid, their self-confidence, their ability to problem solve themselves, their self-discipline to get their work done on their own. Like, does that make sense? Like, so we recognize quickly that, like, we can help kids get their work packet done, help them with a math quiz, but what about the next one? What about when we're not there? So we, and this comes from like just making mistakes over time. I think you would probably agree, like that's the best teacher is time and experience, making some mistakes, being okay. So we did this for years and years and recognized like this isn't working that great. Like, and it came through, like we saw kids who were graduating, becoming adults, and like they would tell us, they were like, things are not going that great. Like I thought they would. And we're like, well, we thought if you got your grades up and you graduated, like that would be all that there is. And they're like, no, it's not really all there is. And so we kind of dug deeper and did a bunch of research, talked to people constantly, recognized like, hey, really this root stuff inside each person is kind of the starting point. So we now focus more on long-term relationships that invest in young people and get to these core life skills. You know, it's like things like self-confidence and integrity, discipline, hard work, these things, you know, teamwork, communication, like the simple act of, hey, we would rather a kid learn the skill of knowing how to go talk to their teacher about their grade than us putting the time into just helping get that homework done. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think what I love the most about y'all's heart is that it's like, yes, we set out to just help with after school work and stuff like that, but realizing that like, let's take a step back. Is that really working? And while it is working, they're passing their classes, they're graduating, they're doing that. But like, what skills are you giving them to like truly help them in the next stage, you know, of life? What would you say, like, what's y'all's mission? Like,
it changed actually. Like our mission the first few years, we were focused on what we saw was that a lot of kids were not graduating. Yeah. And we said, well, that's what we're going to tackle because it was a very, it's measurable. It's measurable. Exactly. Yeah. But we recognized after doing that for years, like this was not producing the results in the young people that we wanted to see. And it was coming from their own mouths of like, hey, like I'm doing okay. But like the kid that dropped out is like, has the same job as me. Yeah. So what's the point of like, so we changed our mission completely, like over the course of, 2 or 3 year process. But our mission now is much more for us, we would say comprehensive. I mean, our goal is to inspire kids in mobile home parks to find God's purpose for their life. Like we call it flourishing. Like, and I don't think like God has a specific job or vocation for each person that like you have to do this. But what we mean is like, we believe each person is created by God on purpose with unique skills and abilities, like to make the world a better place. So that's what we would define as a flourishing adult, someone who is thriving in life as opposed to just getting by. Yeah. Right. So we want to help kids. And they can just get by without us. Like, I mean, they're fine. Like they're very resourceful. Like the
status quo doesn't work.
Yeah. But that's not what they want. That's not what we want. And so like, what does it mean to thrive or flourish in life? And so that's what our mission is now. And so it goes deeper than just homework. Yeah.
And what's like a couple ways that you guys go about doing that?
Yeah, so we have a few things. I would say our primary mechanism, we still gather kids in the afternoons in after school programs, but it is much more, it is focused on a curriculum centered on life skills. Like I mentioned earlier, we have a few that we focus on: confidence, empathy, humility, teamwork, discipline, all these kind of things that we believe like that you would maybe describe a healthy adult. Yeah. And then we just surround those kids with as many positive adult role models, relationships as we can. We think that's actually the secret sauce. I mean, we do, we're a faith-based nonprofit. We're Christians. Our team are all Christians. And so we talk about Jesus a lot, but what I think the secret sauce is that we have multiple positive adult relationships who are in the lives of these kids and telling them how much God loves them every day. Yeah. Like that's the thing. And like, that's where we've seen, like I'll tell you a quick story. Like we took some of our teenagers who are high school now, boys, to Chick-fil-A, Melinda and I did, just to hang out and, kind of catch up with them. This was a couple weeks ago. And all of a sudden they're sitting around there, they're singing a song. We're like, what are y'all singing? And we start listening, like they're singing the song they learned in our preschool program that we did in their neighborhood, and like 12 years ago. Yeah. These kids are 15, 16 years old. Yeah. So they have been with us for 12, 13 years. That's awesome. And like, it was really cool to recognize like, and we see the impact of those long-term relationships. And I wish I could speed it up. I wish I could say like, you can do it in 6 months or whatever, but we don't see that. We think it takes like years and years of consistently showing up. It's just like any team, really. Like that trust happens over a long period of time.
Yeah. Man, that's so good. God, I love what you guys are doing. Like, I just think it's great. I know we've been out there a couple of times. We brought the Blackstone out there, and like just cooking with. So you guys there's an elementary program, middle, and then high school too, exactly. Right? I think we came out for the middle school guys.
That's right.
But just a couple of years of just watching them grow. And what would you say the culture is like Do most of the families cook?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
For sure. A lot of good cooks.
That's what I would think. It's pretty family centered, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
What we're seeing though, like we're seeing, just like it's the same as in any American family. So the parents of our kids are really good cooks, but our kids are American teenagers. They're American kids.
You want chicken tenders?
That's right. And guess what they're not learning how to do? Just like my kids are not learning how to do either. It's like cook what their parents can make.
I know.
So we want them, like we try to spark them all the time with different interests. And we have a summer toolkit thing that I can share more about, that we're using with our kids, and we're sharing kind of out in the world for free. But one of them is like, this is actually a really good one for us to talk about. Like one of the ideas that we've heard from our kids, and one of the ideas that our team put together is like, spend some time this summer cooking with your kids. Like teach them how to cook something.
Yeah. So my son is 18. Like I'm going to try not to cry, but like he's about to graduate and go off to college. And like, I feel pretty convicted with this because the other night I was like, hey, what do you like, you want to grill something? He's like, Dad, I don't know how to grill. And I was like, oh God, don't say that out loud. But the truth is, like, I think I love cooking and serving so much that I've like handicapped our kids from like taking that joy away from them because selfishly, like I want to do it.
Sure.
And I came in and I was like, Jay, we're going to do videos and like, I'm going to teach Riley how to cook, like grilled chicken, steak, burger, chops. Like we'll do a short little series. And then the problem is we had this conversation 6 months ago. Like he's in his, the last semester of high school. It's so busy. And I'm like, hey buddy, when do you want to do this? And he's like, Dad, I'm busy. And I'm like, man, it's like, that's where it's the consistency and it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
Like you got to start kind of early. Cause like he's already ready to, move on and spread his wings, which is great. Like he's been equipped to, hopefully go out and just tackle whatever, he takes on. But it's little things like that like I've been so focused on building a business and, satisfying my desires, that I sometimes overlook the little things. Yeah. I'm like, he doesn't want to do that. Yeah. He wants to go play tennis or basketball or do those things. But the truth is, he does have that like internal desire, but he doesn't always know how to like show it.
Listen, like you're describing, like I think, every dad or every parent, like these regrets that we have as our kid. My kids are teenagers too. Yeah. It's like, am I doing what I need to do? I'm trying to grow a business. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to have a healthy marriage. I'm trying to have a relationship with God. And I got 2 kids that I'm trying to raise. Like it's hard to do it all. And so, if this can be an encouragement, no. So first of all, like if you make some cooking videos, like we'll share them. So send them over and that'll be awesome.
We will share them. And then,
I think another cool thing though, that I've had some folks that are, who have older kids that are grown and kind of been mentors to me have kind of just said, hey, they're like, your kids are going to come back and ask you, like, maybe it's like when he's had too many chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. Like I need to learn how to cook it.
All right, Dad, I'm ready to go.
I think there is something to that. Like that is like, we're going to do the best we can and then recognize that. This is what Melinda and I talk about all the time is like our kids, God willing, for all of us, but our kids, we're going to know them as adults way longer than we knew them as kids.
So, what's also really scary is I heard this the other day and I haven't decided if I'm going to share it with Stacy or not yet, but so in 18 years, right? So we've spent so much time with him over the last 18 years, and they say from now until the rest of whether it be our lives or whatever, it's 1 year.
Yeah, I've heard that too. It's horrible, right?
1 year. Yep. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
But I think the encouraging thing is that it's 1 year of cumulative time, maybe like in the same room or in the same house or whatever. Very
intentional time.
But yeah, like we're a phone call away or text away, like for forever. You know, I think I don't know. I try. Maybe I'm like delusional. I'm like trying to just make myself feel better, but it helps me think about the future of like.
I think we're all gonna have those feelings, whether it be inadequacy. Like here's the thing: I feel that whether I go home, whether I'm being a dad, whether I'm being like Lane's barbecue, whatever it is, and I truly believe like that is literally just Satan. like attacking,
100%,
you know, like just attacking. And so like, that's the thing is how do we live? You know, Matt's been talking a bunch about like abundance versus scarcity. Like, what do you want to live in? Abundance. Like we're all so blessed.
Yep.
Like even in those parks that are local to you guys,
Yep.
like all of them, like those kids are so happy. The families are amazing. Like we are truly blessed and to be able to live where we get to live. So, you know, it's just how do you keep that mindset and keep going? So that's really just having that positive mentality and just tons of gratitude, which we're so filled with. But the pressures of the world can get to you pretty quick. So, all right. So I still have nightmares about this. Still have nightmares. We'd already done maybe 2 or 3. So here's the way it was set up. It was at Greystone.
Yep.
That's where we all set up. And then we had like 4 serving lines. I think it was 4 serving lines. So we had people replenishing, but we didn't have enough team members to help serve, right? Gosh, man, this still like gives me hives. Like, and I remember someone came up. Was it you that came up? And
I don't think it was me. I think
someone else said something and like alerted me, like, "Hey." And by the way, this is every caterer's worst nightmare. There's 350 people. Like there were still lines and tables still had not gotten up to get in lines. And I remember like they come up and they're like, "Hey, are there some other like Cambros with sides in them?" I'm like, "No, I don't think so." You're like, "Oh, okay. You're gonna run out of food." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like we've never run out of food." And I remember I saw you coming. I'm like, "Hey, Jim, it's probably a good time to tell you good news and bad news. Good news, we got a lot of meat. Bad news is we're almost out of size." And what happened was someone ran into the catering kitchen and grabbed like big metal spoons. And we always use those little black ones, like the big metal spoons. People were so excited about the food that they were just like scooping huge, like the corn and all the different things on there. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, you're like, the way you handled it was beautiful. I was like, man, he's got to be drunk or something because like he's not upset at all. But I remember he just looked at me like, "That's all right. I mean, it's just like the volunteers left." And I was like, "Yeah, but they need the food too, you know?" And I just remember you thinking like, if the worst thing that happens is we run out of food. And I was like, "Well, we won't run out of meat." You're like, "It doesn't matter." Like, it doesn't matter. And I was like, that is such a great outlook, you know? And it really, like, we ran out of a couple sides, and it still haunts me to this day. I don't think we've run out of sides ever.
Well, you told me, you said, "Hey, if you let me come back," which of course we were going to, you said, "We will never run out of food again." And we never did. We never did.
I think we auctioned off briskets.
That's right. We had to like, listen, I went and told a few people, I said, "Hey, look, all that's left is a few rolls, but there's tons of meat. Like just load up." And I'm telling you, that's what people come for. I mean, the sides are great. Actually, the mac and cheese is just ridiculously good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how y'all do it good because it's always perfect. But the meat was people were fine. People understand, man.
I know.
People get excited. They're like, "Dude, there's so many people here. We ran out of food. That's awesome."
Yeah, they always do understand. I think it's just that like, and you get that, oh no, like they're here. But that's what happens is we tend to make it all about ourselves. And I'm thinking, oh God, they're going to hate me.
Yeah.
We're out of food. And the truth is like, they were just happy to be there, be a part of the event, you know, and most of them ended up leaving with the meat sweats because they didn't have any sides. You know what I mean?
It's a good memory.
I know. But I remember like the look on your face, like immediately put me at ease when you're like, that's all right. Like it's only volunteers left. And I'm like, that's not all right with me, but all right. If you're cool with it, why can't I?
It's a great story, right?
Yeah,
it's
a
great story.
So, all right. So I think that's the same kind of grace you and Melinda like give in your business, which is why I think like God's hand's been all over it. But second, all right, when you guys are at home, we kind of talked about like how, you know, the chicken tenders and stuff like that, but what is a meal that you love either cooking for your family or like eating with your family?
Yeah. So we, man, we are, when we have the time, we love to grill. Actually, I've gotten really where I like to cook steaks in the oven now.
Yeah.
Which, but
we don't care as long as you season
it is
them well.
always like, listen, so our daughter, the brisket rub.
Yeah.
She loves it on steaks.
Yeah.
And like, she is like constantly like, hey, we're getting close to running out of this brisket. Like, get some more. So we put brisket on the steaks. Like I made last night, we made chicken. The signature sauce is always the hit. I mean, like we use, so signature and brisket for us. We've tried some of the newer ones. Like our kids like them. Melinda likes, some of there's like I forget the name. It's like the Caribbean flavored one. It's sort of fruity. It's
the Kapalua?
Yeah.
Island Dust?
No, Island Dust. So that's kind of her new favorite. Sweet. So we have like a drawer full of, there's like 8 or 10 Lane's rubs in there. And our little boy, Will, he's always got the bottle of sort of white in the fridge that he's just like basically uses on everything. He's like, and this is mine. Like, yeah, you know, you can't do it. So like, that's become a staple. So and it's actually been fun for our kids. Like they would tell you, they would tell you Lane's is the way to go. Like we're going to do this. We're going to go to Stripling's and get some meat and we're going to put Lane's on it and we're going to
We didn't even talk about the Stripling's connection.
That's awesome, huh?
Yeah. So I remember, I was in a small group with Ryan and he was working, I think it was for Gerard.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying, I was still doing insurance and I remember him saying, all right, I'm taking a leap. Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm going out on my own. I was like, really? How are you doing that? And he's like, you ever heard of Stripling's? I was like, yeah. He's like, I'm going to build the one in Bogart. Yeah. And it was for your Uncle Jimmy.
Yep.
And I remember thinking like, dude, that's so amazing. And I think that was one of the things that got my wheels spinning. Like, maybe it's time for me to do something else. Because we started not too long after that. Yeah. Because it took them a little while to build
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah, that's been 12, 13 years around that. I mean, the same time frame. I mean, it's been really fun. Listen, y'all got a huge rack there at Stripling's. Listen, I'm going to tell you this. The best podcast guest you would ever have is my Uncle Jimmy. Yeah. Like, he is the greatest storyteller.
You come out and sit and hang with us?
Listen, that's his favorite thing.
We could even set up in his office. His office is sweet with the guitars.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Like he's the best storyteller that you will ever meet.
I've sat in his office.
You sit there and talk to him. You could ask him. He could talk for hours. You got to do it. You got to do it.
So we can, we've done a couple catering events with your uncle.
Yep.
Like, it's amazing. In fact, I'll wait and save that story for another time.
You should.
All right. So, if you were to do it all over again, all right. So you're subtracting 12 years, you come back from that trip, you have this thing on your heart. Like, do you do it the same? Do you do it different? Like, how do you attack it?
Man, knowing what I know now, like being a 40, I mean, like, listen, like I didn't know anything then. I didn't know anything. Yeah. And I look back, I'm like, man, I totally would have done it differently. I would have led people better. Yeah. Like I would have put more time and energy into the things that mattered. Whereas for a long time, I was putting energy in things that I thought mattered and they didn't matter. I think the biggest one is man, like I was so concerned for a long time about, well, I'll say it this way. I lived in the comparison game for a long time. Like in this season, like we were part of some really cool nonprofit accelerators with other Christian founders and entrepreneurs. And it was really fun. But man, like I spent years and years like comparing myself to them, being like, man, no, I'm not as good as that person. Like, well, listen to how they talk. I mean, they're just, so I did that for years, and that is the thing that I would not do anymore. Like, and I still struggle with it. I mean, I always struggle with it, but I think that just time and, like getting older has helped me recognize like what matters. And so I hope that if I was starting something again, that I would focus on the things that mattered, which ultimately is like people. Yep. And I would stop measuring. Like we used to get all caught up in like, man, we got to have this like formal strategic plan and all this kind of stuff. And like, we don't do that anymore. Like, I think a lot of it for me was rooted in like, well, this person has one. Well, I need to copy them. Yeah. As opposed to learning like, well, maybe God is leading us to grow in a different way. Like, I mean, it's the, Bethlehem church model, right? I've heard Jason say this plenty of times. Yeah. Like, when God opens the door, you just step through.
That's right.
I mean, like listen, I'll tell you this. The communities that we have launched our programs in that I did out of my own selfish ambition, we have had to close them. Yeah. Because God did not tell us to do that, or it wasn't an open door.
Yeah.
All the ones that are now flourishing and doing great, I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a weird thing. I don't even know how to describe that. And someone listening may be like, well, that's not helpful, but I don't know what else to say. Is that I can tell you.
The beauty is when we started the podcast, we promised it wouldn't be helpful all the time.
Good. Like somebody's like, I'm turning this off.
They know just by listening to me, it might not always be helpful.
I'm turning this thing off.
But that's all right. You're in the chair right now, so you get to say whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, like I had plans and said, hey, we should launch in this neighborhood because it sounds good.
Yeah.
But we knew in our gut what it needed to happen, which was church partners, local folks praying for us, volunteer base.
Yeah.
And those things weren't present. And I was like, well, we're just going to do it anyway. And it crashed and burned.
Yeah.
But every time God opened the door, like literally, I can tell you a million stories of how each of the sites that we're currently in now, how they started, had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And all we did was just follow where God was leading.
All right. We're one more question.
Love it.
And then we'll get wrapped up. So what are you most looking forward to in this next season?
And that is a great question. I want to continue to work towards spending 80 or 90% of my time on the things that I am most good at in our organization. Like I'm probably not quite there. I'm still doing some stuff that there are people that are probably better than me.
Yeah.
So I want to continue growing in that sense. Like that's my dream the next 10, 15 years is to be able to do that. I have some like ideas and dreams that are creative that I want to like spend some time on, and I don't have the time to spend on them right now. So those are things that I would love to do, and hopefully, God willing, I'll be able to do some of that. But I don't know. I mean, like that's the gut answer.
Sure.
When you ask that question.
Yeah, that's great. That's cool. I'm going to teach my son how to grill, and
I love it. Absolutely.
I got like a couple things up top.
Absolutely.
So, well, cool. Well, all right. So listen, we've talked a lot about Path United, a lot about what you guys do. The people that are going to be listening to this, how can they like come alongside you and help you guys out?
Absolutely. So I think right now the timing is pretty cool. It's summer. We're, like we recognize how hard summer is as parents for our kids. Like they're on their devices more than they are during the school year. They're bored, whatever you want to call it. So we created a toolkit that we're using with our students at Path that we're like, hey, this is really good. We're all going to use this as parents with our own kids. And we're like, hey, well, let's share this. Like, let's share this with the world. So we've created a toolkit. It's a free resource. Folks can go to pathunited.org/toolkit.
Okay.
And download it. It's just PDF. I mean, it's got some really cool ideas, and maybe 99 of them are terrible, but maybe there's one that's good. So, I mean, it's free. And that's a great way for folks. So if they go down there and do that, it'll ask for your email address. And so we'll send you one welcome video about Path. You can unsubscribe if you want, but that's a way that folks, if they want to get in touch with us, it's a really practical way. Get there. We'll send you some stuff. Folks can reach out to me, easy, Jim@pathunited.org. I'm pretty available on email. So that's probably the quickest ways.
Cool. So now that you guys don't do the gala every year, what's a way that they can give?
Yeah. So
site?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I'm definitely a fundraiser. So, I mean, that's what we do. Like a lot of our giving is local site based. I mean, we have a website, pathunited.org. Okay. Really easy. So you're not going to miss it. We make it really easy to see the donate button so folks can give online. We do some small events throughout the year. So we're doing a Topgolf fundraiser this fall.
Okay.
September. If folks are interested in that, they can reach out to me as well. But we do some small local events. So we're in Loganville, Lawrenceville, Winder, Auburn community, Sugar Hill, Gainesville, Franklin, Tennessee. If any folks listen to Franklin, Tennessee, reach out. We've got some awesome stuff happening up there. So we'd love to chat about that. So those, we do some local events in all those communities.
We were at lunch last week, and we've got like a fractional CFO and CMO, and they both live in Franklin.
Are you serious? Yeah. That's awesome.
So we'll have to do our next trip.
Absolutely. We'll cook some food in Franklin.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
All right, cool. When we'll post all those links in the little, what do you call that, Jeremy? The little thing underneath? The notes or whatever, for they can click on the link. Yeah. But anyways, all right, Jim, thank you so much just for your time, for your heart, for just being here. Man, I can't wait to see what's next for you guys and your organization, just as y'all continue to grow and learn and just to watch the kids. Like, it's cool, like being able to see like ones from the middle school, and then we went over to another one, and like just from a few years, just seeing them grow, and
it's fun.
It's fun. I think the biggest thing I'm drawn to is the laughter.
Yeah.
And so like learning can be fun.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that way when I was in school, but like you guys make it fun. So
that's awesome.
You guys check out Path United. You said pathunited.org. Check it out. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and check it out. And we'll see you soon.